office. My name's Gloria Moss. I'm one of the attorneys that works there. And this is Chris Lindholm, and he's one of our in-house investigators. He's a police officer. And he's specifically assigned to our workers' compensation fraud unit. The district attorney's office investigates and assists in prosecutions of a lot of different types of fraud. We have individuals, prosecutors, as well as investigators assigned to real estate fraud in specific. We also have a unit that investigates auto fraud. I have a case currently where if you take your car in to get repaired and you pay a certain sum of money, and then later you find out that the work that was claimed to be done wasn't done. Those are another kind of case that our office would handle. We also have a specific unit just for victims that are elder. So it could be a financial kind of fraud situation where you were cheated out of money. It could also be a physical abuse or a neglect type of case. Our office also handles those. We have a consumer protection unit, which basically covers all consumers, again, people in the community of all ages. And specifically the unit that Chris and I work in have to do with workers' compensation fraud. So we're looking more at the possible perpetrators and violators of the regulations. The reasons that we wanted to come here and speak to you is because you can become victims in these cases if certain people that you hire or contract with aren't meeting the regulations and don't have the type of workers' compensation that they're supposed to have legally. So that's what we're going to specifically focus on today, and there were 3 different types of regulations that we think we see most of, and I think that's why we're targeting those 3 different regulations and how they can affect you and how you can protect yourself. And now I'll leave it to Chris.
I know it seems kind of weird, like why would we come talk to you guys about workers' compensation fraud, but you can become a victim of this really easy, and we don't want you to become a victim of this because then it makes more work for me. We're here because I'm lazy, I guess. I don't know. First of all, in California, workers' compensation, they came up with this in 1920, to help the employee and the employer. So it's just a given, we have it. So, but for you guys, where it's going to come into play is when you hire people to come to your house to do things for you, to work on things, to build things, to fix things, that kind of stuff. In California, in the Business Professions Code, to be a contractor, you have to be licensed under, it's like 7020, it's in the top one of your hand up there, 7028 of the Business Profession Code says you have to be a contractor to do certain things at anybody's house. And really there's 47 classifications, you don't even know all this, but the easiest way to tell if you need a contractor or not is if the project that you are going to have this person perform for you costs $499.99 or less. That includes material and labor. If it's going to be more than that, this person needs to be a contractor. Okay? And when you say a contractor, a lot of people think, well, that's a guy with a hammer or a plumber or whatever. But really, the reason the contractor is because of the contract. That's the legal agreement that you're going to get into for this person to work on your house or build something for you, and you're going to give them some money. That's pretty much what the contracting part of being a contractor is all about. Inside there, though, those people, if they're going to bring somebody to your house to assist them, in the state of California, if you have 1 employee for your company, you need to have workers' compensation insurance. Okay? So, here's how it's going to affect you if you did this wrong. You hire somebody to come to your house because your sprinkler's broke. Okay? He's going to put in a whole new sprinkler system, and he's going to tell you the job's going to cost $900. And you go, that sounds pretty good. And I'm going to get it done really fast. I'm going to bring a couple guys with me. Okay? And I'm going to get this done in one day. You're going, great, because I really don't want you people at my house for a week tearing up my yard. He brings these people. They do the whole job. You pay them the $900. And 4 months later, one of the people that he brought with him, serves you with a summons and complaint for a personal injury because he got carpal tunnel syndrome working on your sprinklers. And here's the reason. Because in the state of California, if you hire an unlicensed person to do a licensed job, you are the employer, which makes sense. If I'm a contractor, I want to build a house, I need to be licensed. If I hire people, I'm the employer. What happens to me all day long when I run around and these contractors, what they'll tell me is everybody that's working for them is a sub. And that's not true. Okay? This is a contractor, these aren't subcontractors, these are employees and they just don't want to pay the workers' compensation and things that go along with it. That can happen to you. So if you hire an unlicensed person to do a licensed job, you become the employer. And now you're thinking, wait a minute, I have homeowners that'll cover it. No, it won't. It will not. Homeowners insurance will not cover, they cover things like the cleaning that you comes once a week, or people stumble on your driveway or something like that. That's what your homeowners cover. Homeowners does not cover you unless you get a special rider to make a major repair, build something, stuff like that. That can happen to you. If you want to find out more about how much money that's going to potentially cost, for those of you that are savvy with the internet, go look up personal injury attorneys, and go on. They always have a little tab on their thing where they like to brag about how much money they collected for their clients. That way you'll come to them because you're going to give me the most money from my injury. And start reading the little synopsises in the cases that they were involved in and how they got money. Everyone, and they'll tell you how much money they got too. Every one of those you find that says, well, Mrs. Jones was working over here. But what do you mean working and here's a personal injury? That doesn't go together. Working should be workers' compensation insurance, not personal injury. I guarantee you every one of those claims you're going to read is that somebody hired Mrs. Jones who didn't have workers' compensation insurance, and then Mrs. Jones gets injured, whether it's true or not, her injury, and you're going to pay. As a matter of fact, I have a case that this is a true case that happened. A guy lives on the corner of a residential street. Somebody fell asleep driving and hit his little rock wall. He had a moss rock wall, knocked over 4 or 5 of the rocks, type thing. His gardener, which he can have because his gardener charges him less than $499 a month to mow his lawn, edge it, and we call it the mow, blow, and go guy, says, I can fix that for you. He's like, really? $500 bucks? It's great. He goes, you pay me $100 a month for my gardening, plus the $500, there'd be $600 this month. Great, not a problem. Well, the gardener couldn't lift the rocks. The gardener goes to Home Depot and gets 2 guys to come and get him, help him. They're out there all the time. He comes back and they assemble this wall. Everything's great. 4 months later, one of the guys that came from Home Depot hands the homeowner a summons and complaint. You're being sued for an injury. $70,000 is what he wants. The homeowner goes, this is crazy. I never hired you. You worked for him. So the homeowner gets an attorney who agrees. We're going to fight this, right? They go to court. And when you read these complaints, and Gloria writes these things, what they'll do is they'll list 15 reasons why we are not at fault. I covered everything. So the first thing they said there is that we did not hire this guy. He was not my employee. His attorney steps up and says, how much was the job? He says $500 bucks. Well, that's over the $499 mark. So, is your gardener a landscaper? Contractor? No. You hired an unlicensed person to do a licensed job. You're the employer. The court says, yeah, that's been going on for like 80 years. That's a done deal. So the guy goes, so his lawyer says, wait a minute. Homeowner's insurance should cover this. The homeowner's insurance steps up and says, oh, no, we won't. Because we don't cover people working in the yard. We don't cover building stuff. They're out. So he goes, and the guy's complaint was carpal tunnel. So they go, okay, how do you get carpal tunnel working in my yard one day? So this is impossible. It's a repetitive disease. So they bring in a doctor who says, true, it is done. It happens because being repetitive, but it can only be diagnosed once it presents itself and it happened to present itself the day he was working in your yard. So this guy loses. He goes, this is crazy. He takes it to the appellate court. And the appellate court says, no, we agree with the lower court. 70 grand, plus attorney fees, his own, plus the guy who hurt his attorney. Remember, this was a $500 wall. We turned this thing into a $140,000 problem just because he hired an unlicensed person to do a licensed job. For a contractor, he can collect, before he starts, if you sign the contract, he can collect either 10% of the total cost of the project or $1,000, whichever is the least amount. That's all he can get though. So if you're going to add on your house and say it's $100,000, well 10% of that's 10 grand. He can't get 10,000 because $1,000 is less. So they can take either $1,000 or 10%, whichever is the least amount. This is what they'll do to you though, okay? They go, yeah, that's the law. You have to give me $1,000 because that's all I can take. But I'm also going to need 50% down payment for material. They can't do that. They cannot do that. And you never want to do that. Because once you give them the 50%, I mean, we're talking about a $100,000 house, you give them 50% of the material, that's $50,000, and you don't see them again. Okay, now you're out, $51,000, your house isn't done, and then you go, well, I'm going to get a lawyer and sue them. Well, lawyers cost about $300 an hour, and trust me, based on my experience, these guys have no money. You're going to sue whole, and you're not going to get nothing out of it. So, any of that kind of stuff. The contracts, they have to be in writing, okay? They have to, and these guys know that. So when they don't want to do that, don't go with them. They know all this stuff, trust me. Matter of fact, what makes my case, one of the things that I have to prove when I do a workers' comp case is that they knew or should have known that they needed workers' comp. Well, guess what? When they take their little test with the state, those questions are in their exam. So the mere fact that they even applied down there at one time, they knew or should have known. So they know all this stuff.
So Chris, if somebody here wants to hire somebody to do a job, and it's a job that exceeds the $500 limit, what can they do to check and verify that this person is licensed?
What Gloria asked me is, if you want to hire somebody, how can you verify that they're legit and everything? Because a lot of times we get referrals from our neighbors. They did a good job at my house, they're really good, whatever. It's my son, he's a great guy. A lot of those things, trust me, in the world of contracting, they were great last week, this week something happened to them, they are whatever. You can, I have brochures here that I'm going to leave for you guys to check it out, but you can go on the Contractor State Licensing Board website and check them out, and you can run them all kinds of ways. If you have these little super cool phones, I have them in here. I run these guys all day long with my phone. I just go to the app, and you're good, see ya. I mean, all day long. You can check them by license number, by last name. You can check them by the name of their company. It'll list all kinds of stuff. And what it'll tell you on there is if this person's a licensed contractor, what he's licensed to do, and because they are a licensed contractor, they have a bond, which is up to, it's a $12,500 bond. We talk about bonds, and they'll tell you whether or not they have workers' compensation insurance or not. If they don't, and you want to ask them, you're going to bring anybody here to help you with this? I want to see it in the contract, because you don't want to have to pay for that. An interesting thing with these bonds. Bonds for contractors used to be really cheap. They could get a $12,500 policy, which is the bond, for $50, $100, okay? And then we went through this big building craze right now, and then the market fell out and all these foreclosures. Now I understand that the insurance companies are actually looking at the credit rating for the contractor before they can get a bond. So a lot of them, what happens with the bond, if you're unsatisfied with their work and you go through the whole process, the insurance company will pay you $12,500 from this guy's bond because he didn't do a good job at your house. And then they will drop him because he's a risk, right? So now the guy goes to get more insurance. Insurance companies are checking these guys' credit ratings now, and sometimes these bonds that used to cost $50 or $100 are costing these guys $3,000 and $5,000 now. Well, they don't have that kind of money. And the reason their credit is so poor is because when all the boom was going on, everybody was building, these guys were living like rock stars, spending their money all over the place, and they have huge credit debt. So again, that's not somebody I want working on my house. Somebody who's only earns $40,000 a year and has $1 million in credit. I mean, he needs money. He's not going to be paying attention to your job. What else can you do here? The other part with these things is you never pay up front for everything. These, when it comes to contractors, they're always the 10% or $1,000, whatever that's down, and then it's always a third, and you hold back 10% until the job is done. Never get all your money, never pay these guys all up front. And it's usually, it's performance-based, and that'll be in the contract. Make sure it's in the contract. It's performance-based. When it comes to the email and all that kind of stuff, number one, you always have to look for is, did you order this? You know, why are they contacting me? And the other thing is they will never, ever, and trust me, I deal with every bank, I deal with Yahoo, with Google, I deal with all these companies all day long because that's how these criminals do this stuff. I deal with their security people all day long. They will never, ever, ever email you and ask you anything. Ever. They don't do that because they don't know where it's going. And the last thing they want is for your lawyer to contact them saying, guess how much money you owe your previous customer because you just did something against them. They do not want that. And so they will never, no bank, no anybody handles money, PayPal, Craigslist, any of those guys will never, ever contact you email-wise and ask you questions. They will not do it, ever.